Dear students, I'm very happy to welcome you to this year's lecture of Sales and Marketing Theory. My name is Sascha Alavi, and in this course we will be talking about current sales and marketing theories, their principles and their application to firm practice. In fact, we will talk a lot about how such theories can help companies make better decisions and get more productive and effective. I'm really looking forward to working with you in this course in this semester. So let's get started with the first unit on customer relationship management and relevant theories. Okay, let's get going with the first unit on the customer relationship management related theories, which are the social exchange theory, social identity theory, and attribution theory. But before we get into the details of this, let me please first say a few things about the goals of this video lecture. Of course, we will be discussing and repeating these things in class, talking about current examples, case studies, and your questions. In these videos is more like supplemental, additional material where we'll try to explain the principles and applications of these theories and our research projects, which we've conducted with companies to assess those theories in more detail. So please view that as an additional material, as an additional explanation to give you access to those theories, which can really help you in your career, making better decisions in sales management, marketing, and in management in general. So now we'll be discussing customer relationship management related theories, which basically deal with how salespeople and customer can effectively build relationships. Let me share my slides with you on this. I hope you can see me and you can see my slides. I will enlarge myself a little bit here. Now, when we're thinking about the core sales and marketing theory as a whole, you can see here the basic guiding framework, which is underlying the entire class, which is this nice pyramid here, which you can see on the screen. The pyramid is structured from the highest echelon, the strategic level, down to the very specific operational level of customer relationship management and customers. Let's look at these levels in a little bit more detail. Strategic sales management is about if sales managers really determine plans, activities, and actions on a global scale, on a market scale, regarding really long-term endeavors, how the sales force is supposed to be organized. For example, questions like, how should the salespeople's incentive system be designed? Which new technologies should we implement? Should we implement an e-commerce channel? Operational sales management, the level below, as you can see here on this slide, more relates to daily decisions of sales managers. For example, which talk should I give to my sales managers to optimally motivate salespeople? Should I monitor them? How much should I monitor them? How much should I control them? And which types of training should they engage in? So it's more daily to daily business of running teams. Then we come to the level, which is quite essential, of course, also for companies, of customer relationship management, which is the interface between the company, the sales force, and the Salesforce's main goal and asset, the customer. So it's really a very important area, and it deals with the specific activities and tasks that the Salesforce and salespeople need to do every day to engage with customers, to convince customers, to build relationship with customers, also sometimes to resolve conflicts with customers, to resolve customers' problems in negotiations, in joint collaboration. So the customer relationship area, which we will be talking now about, is very much about interaction between salespeople and the customer. So sales encounters, sales discussions, and how to optimally coordinate them. Okay. These are the theories which are related to customer relationship management, social exchange theory, social identity theory, and attribution theory. And we will be discussing each of these in the next couple of minutes. Let's start with social exchange theory first and what we can learn from it. Social exchange theory in brief, as a very quick introduction. Now let's discuss the details of social exchange theory. And let me give you a brief introduction to social exchange theory first, as a matter of a quick intro. Social exchange theory deals with social interactions, basically between people, and how from those interactions between people, relationships, that is, close bonds and ties can arise, right? Because if we're consistently talking with some people, meeting them, getting to know them, exchanging information with them, well, we can build relationships, we can grow closer, and ultimately maybe even build friendships in the course of time. This is the matter of social interactions. We humans are basically social animals, and we are very, very strongly engaging in such interactions. You all know that, that's clear. Social exchange theory takes a very special perspective on such social interactions and relationship building. The theory comes from basic economics and thus takes a cost-benefit perspective on such social interactions and the relationships that arise from the interactions. I have to emphasize this, it's a cost-benefit perspective on social interactions, which could be quite peculiar to some of you, because you would say, well, in social interactions, I'm not counting, right? It should not be about cost and benefits, but from an economic perspective and standard economic theories, well, such a perspective had been intensively investigated and established, such that you are thinking about what benefits could I get from such an interaction and which costs could I occur from engaging in this relationship or this interaction. The basis for the social exchange theory really derives from economics and is the utility theory, which you might know, which is also related to the Homo economicus and basically states that humans are like, in a way, calculating machines that are making decisions solely based on weighing benefits and costs. Of course, we know by now quite more that this is a little bit a simplistic picture, but this is the basis for this theory, and the theory is very valuable and helpful to understand relationships and how salespeople can build relationships. Thus, we'll be discussing it now in more detail. And again, just briefly to categorize the social exchange theory here in our overarching course framework, the theory pyramid from the strategic to the operative level. Of course, social exchange theory is here situated at the customer relationship management level because it is about interactions between salespeople and customer, right? So we're here at the interface to the customer, and how from those interactions, relationships might arise. This is the very essence of customer relationship management, which deals with measures how companies can make strategies how to really build customer loyalty and healthy relationships with customers. In this respect, to approach this topic of social exchange theory and relationship building, first of all, let's raise a very important question here. Why is it in fact important that companies build customer loyalty and close relationships to customers? Take yourself a few seconds and think about the question whether you know the answer. But, well, if you don't know it, don't worry, I will help you and provide you the answer. The answer is basically, you can see it here on this slide. It is a very core principle of marketing and sales research that relationships are very valuable to companies. There is this anecdotal evidence, and which has also been tested in several studies, that keeping a loyal customer is much less expensive as compared to acquiring a new customer, and it can be up to 20 times as expensive to acquire a new customer as compared to holding the existing customer. And you can quite easily imagine that this is true when you think of all the discounts and extra effort that salespeople need to engage in if they want to acquire such a new customer, right? So This slide here illustrates the tremendous value that loyal customers can have for companies by providing plannable, consistent cash flows over a longer course of time. Basically, the customer lifetime value from loyal customers is very high for companies, and this is why they are so valuable to companies and to salespeople. As you can see illustrated here on this slide, we see the benefits of customers to a firm across time. And you can see quite easily from the diagram that the more years elapse and the more years the customer is tied to the company, the more valuable he becomes by providing several benefits and advantages to the company. Here in the first year, when he's still a new customer, basically, when the relationship just started, maybe the company and salespeople have invested a lot of time, effort, and maybe even money through discounts into the relationship, such that the overall beneficiality or profit from this customer, the overall lifetime value maybe, is negative. But then in the course of the relationship, from year to year, the customer might buy more, but it might also get less costly to serve him. You might need to talk less with him. You might need to travel in your car less to the customer. Maybe the customer is paying higher prices and providing more references to the company, which itself have a very high value. So you can easily imagine how a customer can grow more valuable and valuable across the years and the time. And this is why customer loyalty and forming strong customer relationships is so existentially important for firms and for salespeople. Now, after having established the very importance of customer loyalty and building strong customer relationships, let's think about the relation to social exchange theory and how it informs relationship building. On this slide, you're seeing basically the key principles of social exchange theory. It's about an interaction of the customer with the sales person and how they are exchanging benefits and costs in those interactions, right? So the customer and the salesperson are the main actors for social exchange theory. Moreover, the competitors play a very important role for this theory because they're in a way the reference level for this exchange. That is, if the cost-benefit ratio of the exchange is not favorable either for the customer may simply leave the interaction and the relationship and engage in business with the supplier's competitor, right? So these are the core components. We need to think about the role of the customer, of the salesperson, and the competitor. And as I said before, the cost-benefit analysis related to this exchange is quite substantial. Now let's get into the specifics of social exchange theory. Here you can see the core components of the theory on this slide. There's the customer and the salesperson and the competitor. And the customer and the salesperson are engaging in an exchange, in an interaction, which is supposed to lead to the formation of a relationship. But of course, such a relationship does not arise automatically. Only if the customer and as well as the salesperson perceive sufficient benefits from the relationship at reasonable cost levels, right? So, and of course, we should not forget here about the role of the competitor, because also a customer would not engage in a relationship, in a long-term relationship, maybe with a salesperson, if there are competitors who are more attractive, who have better benefits to cost ratios, which are more attractive to the customer and which he would choose and select then. So social exchange really is about the actors here in the interactions build perceptions of the benefits and the costs of the encounter and the relationship, and based on what they think about the benefits and costs, we would rather engage in more interactions and ultimately in relationships. or whether they really directly terminate the interaction and maybe then leave for a different competitor. And of course, in the course of time, if the exchange continues over a longer time and there's more exchange, this can lead to interdependence, that both the customer and the salesperson grow dependent on each other. They need each other. And of course, from such interdependence, being dependent on each other, power dynamics can arise, and also quite really close relationships based on reciprocity. But we will get into this in more detail in a few seconds, where we will discuss these components in more detail and also look at the specific role of power and reciprocity and what it implies. So let's look at the core principles of social exchange theory step by step. The first tenet of social exchange theory is that business relationships form on the basis of a subjective cost-benefit analysis. What does it mean? I said it before. The actors, the customer and the salesperson, think about the benefits that they have from the relationship and from the encounter, but also the cost that might arise. Let's look at an example here from a software solution seller, like for example Salesforce.com or SAP, who might have a meeting with the customer, and well, of course, the customer might have needs and requirements regarding the software that he wants to implement in his company, and the supplier of the software, like Salesforce, can provide such a software offering and thus help the customer resolve a problem. You can ultimately see that there are several costs and benefits involved for both sides. For the customer, the benefit from the relationship might be to get an effective software solution, while the costs, of course, are the price to be paid, maybe also getting into a dependence from such a powerful software provider. On the other hand, when looking at the costs and benefits for the salesperson here, of course, the benefit is getting business, getting revenue from the customer, while the costs are maybe like the necessary level of effort, service, and time invested, which all needs to be accounted for according to social exchange theory, and which can clearly, strongly shape the behaviors and the business relationship. So this is the first tenet. Now let's look at the second one. The second core idea of social exchange theory is that relationships here of the customer and the salesperson are only initiated and of course then continued across time if the benefit to cost ratio exceeds a reference level, a specific level. The level can be either the preferences of the individual parties, of the customer, of the salesperson, or the benefit to cost ratio provided by a competitor. Obviously, if the benefits and costs provided by Salesforce.com are much lower as compared to SAP, maybe here in this example, then of course the customer rather would not form a relationship with one but the other. Now let's look at the third key principle of social exchange theory, which is related to the idea that there is exchange of the benefits in the interaction and relationship creates an interdependence. This can be is a very basic idea and can be easily understood. For example, here with the software seller is providing a really efficient software solution for the customer across several years, and the customer uses it intensively and comes to rely on it. Then, of course, the customer gets dependent on this seller. But at the same time, of course, the salesperson seller may come to depend on the revenues and maybe also the feedback which the customer provides, which is then a give and take, which means an interdependence. And this also means that the relationship is getting closer and they're getting more committed to each other. Basically, they might need each other. But of course, the closer such a relationship grows, social exchange theory says then that power dynamics and reciprocity may arise. For example, here, if the software seller is providing more and more benefits to the customer, then the customer may feel that he needs to pay back, to give something back. So he might create a lot of positive word of mouth for the seller. He might also be willing to demand less price discounts, buy more products from this provider, and maybe also pay higher prices altogether. So technically, in the jargon of social exchange theory, the customer wants to reciprocate the benefits received from the software provider here. But at the same time, this interdependence, if they're growing closer and closer, of course, this creates power dynamics in the sense that one party might get more dependent on the other as compared to the other one, right? So, for example, if the entire business of the customer strongly and fundamentally relies on the software solution provided here by Salesforce.com, maybe, then the customer is heavily dependent on the provider. And of course, this gives the provider leverage to influence the customer, maybe to make him pay higher prices or, accept lower service levels. Basically, to some extent, the customer then might be at the mercy of the supplier, indicating that power dynamics can play an essential role then originating from such a relationship. Maybe take a few seconds to process this and also think about your personal relationships and how those aspects can play a role in this, and find some examples from your personal relationships about these aspects. Well, if you have done so, then let's continue with social exchange theory. Here you have again an overview of the key principles of the entire theoretical framework. As I said, it's about that salespeople and customers are engaging in exchanges of benefits and costs. And if those relationships, if those ratios are favorable, the exchange continues and grows over time. And can lead to healthy, productive relationships. Of course, what comes along with this is an interdependence. They grow, they need each other increasingly in the course of those relationships. And ultimately, then, reciprocity and power might arise. Let's look at application now of this theory, how we use the theory in a research project, in a big study with car dealerships all across North Rhine-Westphalia, which we've conducted several years ago. And we use social exchange theory to provide a very important question which posed managers to us from the car dealerships. And the basic question here was, in fact, quite simple, but research so far did not have a compelling answer. It was, do loyal customers in fact receive higher price discounts in price negotiation with salespeople, or do loyal customers in fact receive lower price discounts? Because there had been different ideas about this effect, and maybe take a few seconds to think about that. I think you might arrive at the answer that the answer is less obvious and clear than you might have initially thought. Basically, the managers that we talked with about this question also had different ideas about this relationship. Some said really that loyal customers in particular, are really price aggressive and are demanding high discounts in negotiations. They even said that they use their loyalty as a trump card to enforce price discounts from the salespeople. However, on the other hand, there were managers who said exactly the opposite. Basically, they said our loyal customers are very docile. We can really enforce very high prices with them. Basically, it was very drastic what he said. He said they are piggy banks. We can butcher them. Quite drastic language here, but you see that these are countervailing ideas about how the relationships is. And we used social exchange theory to explore this question, and that we could publish it in one of our leading journals, and did several big data collections on this. So our reasoning here regarding this question, how customer loyalty influences negotiated discount, was as follows. We thought there could be either positive or negative effects. But drawing on social exchange theory, we arrived at the following reasoning. We said that customer loyalty implies that customers, over, as you could imagine from the diagram which I showed to you before, are investing time, effort, and their money across several years continuously in the relationship with this seller. So they're creating a lot of repeat business and thus a lot of benefits to the salesperson and the selling company. Then again, if you remember the principles of social exchange theory, this implies that an interdependence can grow and that customers can perceive basically that they contributed a lot to the seller and that the seller might be to some extent be dependent on them. Thus, they may conclude that they have a certain level of power due to their loyalty over the seller. And this is quite a very reasonable notion, because loyal customers are oftentimes a very important basis for the existence of companies, and they have quite a lot of power over salespeople and the companies. There's really this saying that customers can play the loyalty card to enforce their interests in relationship with the customers. And of course, if customers think that they have this power in the relationship, they are more motivated to use this power, maybe in the price negotiation with the customer, with the salesperson, to make more aggressive price demands. They can, for example, say, well, look, I'm a loyal customer. I created a lot of business to you. Don't you want to give me a concession or a major price discount really to compensate me in a way for my loyalty and keep me also loyal for the future? In practice, we saw that such arguments really are oftentimes intensively used, and that such arguments really worked very effectively and very strongly in increasing the level of discounts that the customer were receiving from the negotiation with the salespeople. So all in all, social exchange theory could be used really to explore this interesting question. And we, as I said, we collected much data on this, and we found that this reason here is absolutely correct, because as you can see here, for example, we had thousands of customers from a European jewelry chain, and we indeed saw that the loyal customers extracted a much higher level of discounts as compared to the less loyal customers, which basically were new customers which did not have a long interaction and exchange with the salespeople and their company. As you can see here, the difference is quite high, almost up to 3%. And which is a very, very, very big difference when it comes to discounts and the related price margins. Now, before we come to the next theory and its application, let's think about a little bit how we can use social exchange theory to solve other business problems in sales management. Because, as I repeatedly emphasize here in this course, theories are not a purpose on themselves or just for their own. Theories should be tools to solve questions, to help make better decisions by giving guidance to researchers, but of course also to managers and practitioners. So let's think about how we can employ and use social exchange theory for different areas, for different decisions. For example, let's think about areas related to digitalization. Can social exchange theory have implications and help here? Related to e-commerce, also maybe like the benefits and costs relating to e-commerce, and if salespeople are or sales managers are implementing new e-commerce channels. Price increases are a major topic at the moment. All companies are heavily affected by this. What implications does social exchange theory have related to price increases, or also regarding basic performance management? How can this theory be used to optimize salespeople's performance and make salespeople more productive? These are important questions which you need to consider when thinking about how to effectively employ the theories.